My name is Frank LaPerry. I work for Novedge, and I want to welcome everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, I guess, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to the Best of the Best webinar series, brought to you by Novedge, the design software superstore. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We're very excited to not only kick this off, this whole series. It's going to be a bi-weekly, kind of an indefinite series, but we're also excited to have the infamous Jonathan Pickup as our first 3D guru to present. John
Hi, Frank.
is an Hey, what's up, John? John's an architect. He's trained in New Zealand and in the UK, and he has more than 30 years of experience. He's been writing and producing Vectorworks manuals and providing customer support for more than 15 years. His company, Archon CAD, is the premier provider of third-party manuals and training resources for VW. He also runs the Vectorworks online user group and provides most of its main direction. And an interesting side note, he's also into motorbiking. We're also extremely pleased to not only have John as a presenter of John's caliber, but also to be able to be the very first to kind of open up Vectorworks 2011 and check out some of its new features. John's going to enlighten and delight us probably for like the next 45 minutes or so, but then after that we're going to kind of open it back up for a Q&A session. So stick around for that.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the changes. That there are some major changes in the way Vectorworks deals with 2D and 3D information. And the words 2D don't really describe the information on the screen anymore. So we don't really have a great differentiation between 2D and 3D. And I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about something called textiles, which I'm pretty excited about, because I think textiles are going to make it very easy to control your text in a document. Here's some text I've selected on my screen. Hopefully you can see that, Frank. And there's a pop-up menu here called Text Style on my Object Info palette. When I choose a style of text, all of the text in that text block changes. Now, one of the nice things is that a text style is a resource, and so you can build yourself a library, and I've done that, and I've got a whole lot of text styles that I like to use. I'm a real fan of this one called Tecton. When I click on Tecton 10mm, it'll suck in that text style and apply it to that object. You'll even notice that it controls the position, the justification of that text. So instead of it being top left, it's now center. And this means that you can have text styles in your resource browser. You can drag and drop these text styles, and it's a great way of maintaining consistency of information or consistency of presentation right through the document. Now, you will have noticed that both of those text styles changed in color. If I now edit that text style, both of those blocks of text that had that text style assigned have updated. So now you can control text right through your document really easily with a series of text styles. Now, those of you that have done any of my beginner training might recognize these three rectangles I've got on the screen. Now, the reason I've got these three rectangles is because it's a real simple way of explaining some of the things that have happened. And I'd also like to put a dimension on. Now, text styles can also be dragged and dropped on dimensions. So you see one text style is different from the other. One's slightly bigger than the other. So you can assign a text style to your dimension standard, and now you've got global control of all of your text, your dimensions and your blocks of text and callouts through this concept of text styles. Something that's changed dramatically in Vectorworks 2011 is the introduction of what is called Planar Graphics. Now let's change our view quickly to 3D. Now Vectorworks 2010 Vectorworks 2010 was the first program to introduce the start of planar graphics, and in 2010 you did not see the colors or graphics assigned to objects on the screen, but now you can. So instead of talking about objects being in 2D, I'm going to talk about objects being planar, that is, that they're stuck on a plane. These objects are stuck on a three-dimensional plane which is floating on the ground. You can work in this planar method, so you can have these sort of pseudo 3D dimensions. They do look like real 3D dimensions, and they'll dimension anything on the plane. As long as you use a working plane, then you can put dimensions in 3D. One of the changes with dimensions is this little dashed line which controls the witness line length. So now it's a lot easier to control your dimensions. I think the idea of this being able to draw these rectangles in 3D is going to be a huge improvement, and I've got a couple of things to show you later on. Let's look at the text. So text in 3D can still be edited. I don't know if you noticed, but it didn't jump. Sometimes in the old days you used to edit text and the text box would grow. You'd never know exactly what it was going to look like when it's finished. And here it is. It's actually finished, stuck on the ground, and we're looking at it in a 3D mode. You can do all your basic 2D functions here. So you can stretch callouts, you can change the size of objects, you can use clip and trim and all that kind of stuff. Now those of you that are new to Vectorworks 2010, and I don't know how many of you were new in Vectorworks 2000 or haven't seen Vectorworks 2010 yet, one of the things I really like is the interactive nature between an object and its dimension. If I change that to 2 inches, I can change the shape of my object. Let's try that again, and we'll change that to 8 or 9 inches. And so you can change objects quite easily. You can create a plan. For example, I think that it's going to change our workflow. For example, you could draw a very quick plan of a building, then get the client's approval, then dimension it, and only after dimensioning you could actually change some of the objects by updating their dimensions. So if a room has a silly dimension, you could type in the required room dimension and all the walls would move. Now I've actually got a part of a building here as well. So if I look at everything on my screen, you should be able to see there's also a building there. I'm going to choose one of these objects, and I can also set layer planes like elevation or roof. Now I talked to you before that 2D isn't so much 2D but planar. So we can choose a plane like an elevation, and I've now got a working plane on that elevation. If I use a rectangle and just draw something, you can see it's drawn that object directly on the elevation of the building. If I draw an object in this area, let's say we're going to make this into a meter box. I'm just going to offset it. So I'm just giving it a color so you can see it. Now let's zoom out and see everything. I'm going to set my working plane to the front of my house. I'm going to select that green meter box, and I'm going to change that working plane from layer to working plane, and it will stick onto the front of my building. So this is a fantastic way of changing information, getting it from one plane to another. It's really quick. Now, any of you that have seen the Vectorworks demonstrations, there's lots of talk about a tool called the push-pull tool. This is the push-pull tool here. I click on an object and move my mouse, and it just starts pulling that object down. So let's make that come out by, say, 3 inches. Notice it's gone that way, so let's just try that again. -3 inches. Come towards me, click once, and there's my object. If I render that quickly, so there's my object pulled out of my building directly off the face of the building. So now what you can do with Vectorworks is to draw objects directly on the building and then extrude them. So I could draw any shape I like, circle, an oval, and it's drawing it directly on the face of the building. Get your push-pull tool, click and pull. Let's make that -4 inches, and it's directly pulled out of the building. If I fly around the building, you'll see those objects sticking out of the building. So I think that's pretty cool. It's going to be quite an improvement in the way you do your 3D work. What I'd like to do is I'd like to do a quick demonstration